Give me a baby and I'll pay your debt, but after one night, the millionaire won't let her go. In Seattle, Washington, on a cold July morning, Sophia Parker awoke to the urgent sound of knocking at her door. She knew exactly what it meant. The landlord of the small room she rented had come to collect the overdue rent. At only 19, Sophia had endured enough hardships to feel as if she had lived an entire lifetime. Orphaned at the age of 14 after a car accident claimed both her parents, she had been forced to learn self-reliance far too early. With no close relatives to turn to, she was placed in an orphanage until she turned 18. When she left that place, full of dreams and hope, she thought she would finally be able to build a decent life. But reality proved far harsher. Her job at a cafe downtown barely covered the rent for her tiny room, which held nothing more than a single bed, an old wardrobe, and a small table. The bathroom was shared with other tenants, and often there was no hot water. Even so, Sophia always kept her room clean and tidy. From a young age, she had learned that dignity was not determined by the size of one's home or the amount of money in one's pocket, but by the way a person faced hardships. She always tried to hold her head high, even when everything around her seemed to be falling apart. That morning, hearing the knock, she knew she had to face the truth again. She had no money to pay. When Mr. Danny, a man in his 60s with silver hair, usually quite understanding, knocked for the third time, Sophia had no choice but to open the door. This time his voice was more serious. "It's been 3 months now. If by Friday you can't pay at least half, I'll have no choice but to ask you to leave." Those words hit her like a bucket of cold water. The thought of ending up on the street made her tremble. Sophia pleaded for another week, saying she was trying to find extra weekend work. But Mr. Danny only shook his head. "This time I mean it. Friday is the final deadline." After he left, Sophia collapsed onto her bed and cried. The thought of returning to the streets terrified her. She knew that road rarely led to anything good. That morning, she forced herself to focus on doing the laundry, tidying her room, and making a weak cup of tea to calm down. Sophia had once been a studious girl with big dreams, going to college, becoming a teacher or a nurse. But the death of her parents had forced her to bury those dreams deep in her heart. Now the threat of eviction was shaking her faith. That afternoon, when she arrived at the cafe, the owner, Linda, a kind woman in her 50s, immediately noticed her sadness. After hearing her story, Linda sighed. "You know how tough things are these days. Customers have dropped a lot." At the end of the shift, Linda handed Sophia an old newspaper and pointed to a small classified ad. At the very bottom of the classifieds page, nestled between used car ads and missing person notices, was a small but curious line. "Healthy woman, age 20-25, needed for a special medical procedure. High compensation, absolute confidentiality. Apply in person at Vega Medical Center, 432 Pine Street, from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Sophia read the ad over and over. It gave no specifics about what the medical procedure was, but the amount listed beneath it was 10 times her monthly salary. "Do you think this is real?" Sophia asked, her eyes still glued to the tiny print. Linda shrugged. "Could be a medical trial, bone marrow donation, or some kind of research. Could also be nonsense. But Sophia, when you've got nothing left to lose, sometimes you just have to try." Those words echoed in Sophia's mind all day. She didn't know why, but a faint intuition told her that if she walked through the doors of Vega Medical Center, her life would never be the same again. The next afternoon, Sophia stood in front of a 10-story glass building in downtown Seattle. On the gleaming sign, the words Vega Medical Center shone in silver. It looked more like a luxury hotel than a medical facility. She adjusted her slightly worn beige sweater, took a deep breath, and pushed the door open. Inside, the air smelled faintly of lavender essential oil, accompanied by soft piano music. The reception area gleamed, with pristine white leather chairs and modern art adorning the walls. The receptionist, a woman in her early 30s wearing a perfectly tailored gray suit, offered a professional smile. "Good afternoon. How can I help you?" Sophia hesitantly held out the classified ad. "I came about this posting." The receptionist's smile shifted, becoming more serious. She nodded, picked up her desk phone to make a short call, then said, "Please have a seat. Someone will be with you shortly." About 10 minutes later, a tall woman in a black suit with neatly tied brown hair appeared. Her eyes were sharp, but her voice was calm and warm. "I'm Clara Bennett, the Center's legal counsel. Please follow me." They walked down a long hallway, lit by warm golden lights hanging from the ceiling. Clara opened the door to an elegant conference room with a walnut table and leather chairs. At the head of the table sat a man. He looked to be in his mid-30s with neatly cut black hair, chiseled features, and deep gray-blue eyes. His navy suit fit perfectly, and the watch on his wrist spoke of quiet wealth. "Sophia Parker?" His voice was deep and steady. "Yes." Sophia sat across from him, her heart thudding. Clara took a seat beside the man and opened a folder. "Before we begin, you need to sign a confidentiality agreement. Everything discussed here is strictly private." Sophia skimmed the dense legal text but understood the gist. She could not share any information. She signed and handed it back. The man leaned slightly forward. "I'm Adrian Vega. I'll be direct. I'm looking for a healthy woman to serve as a surrogate for my child. The process will be entirely medical, no personal involvement. I'm not seeking marriage or romance. I just want a biological child." Sophia's eyes widened. She had guessed it might be some kind of medical research, but she hadn't expected this. Adrian continued, "I'm prepared to cover all medical, housing, and living expenses during the pregnancy, plus a substantial payment after the birth. Enough for you to start a whole new life if you wish." Clara handed Sophia a sheet detailing the payment and benefits. When her eyes landed on the final figure, she had to stop herself from gasping. It was more than 10 years' worth of her current wages combined. "You don't need to decide now," Adrian said evenly. "Take this home, read it carefully, think about it. If you agree, call Clara within the next 3 days." Sophia accepted the folder, her hands trembling slightly. Questions swirled in her mind. Why would a successful, wealthy man choose this path? Why not adopt? Why her? She stood, giving a polite nod. "Thank you for this opportunity." Clara escorted her back to the lobby. As Sophia stepped out into the street, the cold wind slapped her face, but her chest felt warm. 3 days to decide, 3 days to choose between a secure, comfortable life and a challenge no one could predict. The next 3 days felt like an emotional roller coaster. She read the contract over and over, weighing each clause carefully. This sum of money could pay off all her debts, allow her to continue her studies, and even open a small shop. But the thought of carrying a stranger's child and then handing it over left her deeply unsettled. On the evening of the 3rd day, when Mr. Danny came again to collect the rent with a look of displeasure, Sophia made her decision. She called Clara and arranged to meet the next day. Hanging up, she felt both relieved and afraid, knowing she was about to embark on a journey whose destination no one could foresee. The next day, Clara greeted her with a warm smile. "I'm very glad you agreed." It took them over 2 hours to go through each clause. Sophia would have to move into the apartment provided by Adrian, attend regular medical checkups, follow a specific diet, and avoid any risks to the pregnancy. In return, she would receive a generous monthly allowance, along with a large sum after giving birth. When the paperwork was signed, Sophia felt as though she had just entered into an agreement that would change her life. Clara handed her the keys to the new apartment and a credit card for expenses. Dr. Hector Morales would be waiting for her the next day to begin the tests. The apartment Adrian had prepared was a world apart from her old rented room. Located in an upscale neighborhood, it had 2 bedrooms, a spacious living room, a modern kitchen, and a small laundry area. Opening the door for the first time, Sophia could hardly believe this would be her home for the coming months. No more worries about rent, food, or utility bills. Yet she still felt as if she were living a borrowed life. Dr. Hector Morales was a middle-aged man with graying hair and glasses, whose calm demeanor put Sophia at ease from the very first meeting. He explained the artificial insemination procedure in detail, from the initial health tests to the hormone treatments that would prepare her body for the embryo transfer. The entire process would be closely monitored to ensure safety. In the first weeks, Sophia gradually adapted to the routine of regular checkups, taking medication as prescribed and sticking to the diet. Adrian occasionally came to the clinic, always keeping his distance, politely asking about her health, but never touching on personal matters. Even so, Sophia began to notice that beneath his cold exterior was a lonely man. Once she caught him staring out the window with a pensive sadness, making her wonder what past had caused him to shut himself off like that. On the day of the procedure, Sophia felt both nervous and determined. All her tests were perfect, her body was ready. But as the doctor prepared the equipment, an unusual noise came from the machine. After several unsuccessful adjustments, the doctor was forced to cancel the procedure due to a malfunction in the cooling system, which would take weeks to repair. The problem was that Adrian's schedule didn't allow for waiting, and missing the optimal point in her cycle would mean starting over. Dr. Morales said there was another option: natural conception. The suggestion made Sophia blush. She understood exactly what it meant, and she saw the tension in Adrian's eyes, even though he remained outwardly calm. The doctor said they could think about it and give an answer the next day, but if they didn't proceed immediately, they would have to wait at least 2 months. Adrian looked at her, his voice deeper than usual. "It's your decision. I'll understand if you want to stop. I can cancel my trip." For the first time since they met, Sophia saw him looking truly vulnerable. She replied, "I need to think about it. Can I give you my answer tomorrow?" The doctor nodded in agreement. As they left the clinic, Adrian offered to drive her home. Normally, she would have refused, but this time, she said yes. Sophia Parker wanted to understand more about Adrian Vega. On the way back to the apartment, most of the time they remained silent. She studied his face as he drove, noticing small details she had never observed before. A faint scar near his right ear, his large and steady hands, and the habit of lightly clenching his jaw whenever he was deep in thought. When they stopped in front of her building, Adrian turned off the engine and stared straight ahead for a long moment before speaking. "Sophia, I want you to know that whatever you decide, I will completely respect it. This contract was never meant to put you in a difficult position." His sincerity caught her off guard. She asked, "Why is having a child so important to you?" Adrian stayed silent for so long, she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a pain he tried to hide. "My company will be passed on to the next generation. My father built it from nothing, and now it's my responsibility to ensure it continues. But I will never get married." His answer came out colder than he intended, and Sophia sensed there was much more behind it. "Never? Why?" she asked, surprising herself with her own boldness. For the first time, Adrian looked directly into her eyes. "Because love only brings pain, and I've had enough of it." In his eyes was a deep sadness that made her chest tighten. She realized that behind all the wealth and power, this man carried wounds that had never truly healed. "I'm sorry for what happened to you." Adrian seemed surprised by her genuine words, and for a moment his cold exterior completely fell away. That night, Sophia couldn't sleep, thinking about everything that had just happened. Things were now far more complicated than at the start. It was no longer just about a medical procedure and money. Emotions had entered the picture, even if neither of them wanted to admit it. She thought about the life she could have with that money, the safety she had never known, the stable future she had always dreamed of. But she also thought about the baby she might carry, about the lonely man who would be the child's father, and the strange feeling that she and Adrian were slowly forming a connection despite having known each other for only a short time. By morning, she had made her decision. She would proceed with the plan, no matter the method. The next day, they went to the clinic. Dr. Hector Morales, though professional, couldn't entirely hide his tension. He led them to a private area, a room more like a luxury hotel suite than a medical facility, with a wide bed, soft lighting, and gentle background music. After explaining some medical details, the doctor left, giving them privacy. The silence between them grew heavy. Adrian walked to the window and said, "I'll do my best to make this as little awkward as possible for you. I know this is your first time, and I promise I'll be careful." The fact that he acknowledged her lack of experience made Sophia feel both nervous and comforted. "Thank you. I just want everything to happen with respect." He turned to look at her, his eyes unexpectedly gentle. "It always will." As they moved closer, Adrian slowly raised his hand to cup her cheek with tenderness. "Are you sure?" he asked one last time. She gave a small nod. What happened next was nothing like what Sophia had imagined. Adrian was incredibly gentle, patient, and attentive. He kissed her slowly, as if they had all the time in the world, awakening in her a deep emotion she had never known, not just physical desire, but a connection and intimacy beyond any contract. When she fully opened herself to him, it became a moment that changed them both. Sophia felt as though she had rediscovered a part of herself that had long been asleep, and Adrian, despite his experience, was moved by the purity and completeness of her surrender. Her tears fell, not from pain, but from an overwhelming sense of joy. Afterward, as they lay side by side, both knew that everything had changed. They were no longer just two people fulfilling a contract, but two souls who had found an unexpected bond. Adrian looked at her as if truly seeing her for the first time. "You're special." Those words made Sophia realize her life would never be the same again. In the weeks that followed, they both tried to return to their normal routines, but neither could deny that something had changed between them. Sophia Parker continued living in the apartment he had provided, attending regular checkups and following all of the doctor's instructions. Adrian Vega remained busy with work, but every time they met at the clinic, there was always a certain energy between them, something difficult to name. In the weeks that followed, they both tried to return to their normal routines, but neither could deny that something had changed between them. Sophia Parker continued living in the apartment he had provided, attending regular checkups and following all of the doctor's instructions. Adrian Vega remained busy with work, but every time they met at the clinic, there was always a certain energy between them, something difficult to name. They greeted each other and exchanged medical information, but avoided personal topics. It was as if they were both trying to pretend that afternoon had never happened, though they both knew it could never be forgotten. 3 weeks later, Dr. Hector Morales confirmed that Sophia Parker was pregnant. A surge of joy mixed with anxiety washed over her. She was now carrying Adrian Vega's child. What was supposed to be just a job had become something profoundly meaningful. Adrian received the news with restrained satisfaction, but there was something different in his eyes, a genuine concern that went beyond financial interest. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "A little nauseous in the mornings, but the doctor says it's normal." He nodded, still looking at her as if he wanted to say more. In the days that followed, Adrian began appearing more often, always with an excuse at first, asking about test results, speaking with the doctor, or reviewing the contract. But Sophia realized he was finding reasons to be near her. Sometimes he offered her a ride home. Sometimes he stopped by the apartment under the pretense of checking if she needed anything. Their conversations grew more personal, softer, and warmer. One afternoon, finding her lying tired on the sofa, Adrian went into the kitchen to make ginger tea and said, "My mother always did this when I was sick." It was the first time he had spoken about his mother in such a personal way. His voice carried a note of nostalgia, and she realized his mother had passed away. "She died when I was 25. Cancer. Very fast." Sophia took his hand and said, "I'm so sorry. That must have been hard." He didn't pull his hand away. Gradually, Adrian opened up about his past, how he had once been deeply in love with a woman named Camila, engaged to be married, only to discover she had been unfaithful with his best friend and had only been with him for his money and status. He had caught them in the very house he had bought for their wedding. "That day, a part of me died. I swore I would never let anyone get close enough to destroy me like that again." Hearing this made Sophia's heart ache. She understood why he had built such walls around himself. Over time, Adrian became more caring, buying fruits recommended by the doctor, bringing books on pregnancy, even carrying in a hanging crib for the baby's room. She knew this wasn't because Clara had suggested it. It was because he was slowly allowing himself to grow attached to both the baby and to her. They began sharing more. His fear of fatherhood, the pressure of preserving his family's legacy, the loneliness despite always being surrounded by people. Sophia told him about her abandoned dreams, her childhood without a family, her worries about the future. They realized they had more in common than they thought. Both knew the weight of loneliness and carried scars rarely shown to others. "Sometimes I think, maybe the reason we met is bigger than just having a baby," Sophia said one evening as they sat on the balcony, gazing at the stars. Adrian looked at her, his expression unreadable. One morning, when Sophia was 4 months pregnant, she woke up with a dull ache in her lower abdomen. It wasn't severe, but it lingered, making her uneasy. She called Adrian before even calling Dr. Morales, and he was at her apartment in less than 20 minutes. Adrian Vega was clearly worried, more than the situation really required. He immediately took Sophia Parker to the clinic, where Dr. Hector Morales ran all the tests and confirmed that everything was fine, just a normal discomfort of pregnancy. But throughout the entire time at the hospital, Adrian stayed by her side, holding her hand and constantly asking if she was okay. It was in that moment that Sophia realized he was no longer there, merely as the biological father of the child. He was there as someone who genuinely cared for her, and she had to admit to herself that her feelings for Adrian had grown far beyond anything their contract had ever stipulated. One night, when Sophia Parker was 5 months pregnant, Adrian Vega came to the apartment later than usual. She was in the kitchen preparing a light snack when she heard the sound of a key turning in the lock. He had a key for emergencies, but until now he had always knocked. This time, he didn't. When she stepped into the living room, she saw him sitting on the sofa, his head buried in his hands. There was something different about him, a vulnerability she had never seen before. "Adrian, what's wrong?" she asked gently. He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. "Today marks 7 years since my mother passed away. And for the first time in all those years, I don't want to be alone." The confession stunned Sophia. Without thinking, she sat down beside him and wrapped her arms around him. That pure embrace broke down every wall they had built between them. Adrian let himself be held, feeling the comfort he hadn't allowed himself in so long. "She would have liked you," he whispered. "My mother once told me I'd meet someone who would make me want to be a better man. Maybe she was right." Sophia's heart pounded at his words. It was the first time he had admitted to personal feelings beyond the arrangement. She was about to say something, but Adrian abruptly pulled away, as if realizing he was going too far. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have come here like this. I shouldn't have said those things. She stepped forward, holding on to his hand. Why not? Why can't you be honest about what you're feeling? He looked at her, conflict flickering in his eyes. Because that's not part of the agreement. You and the baby are only temporary in my life. When this is over, you'll go your way, and I'll go mine. Her heart ached at his words. You and the baby? She repeated. You say it like the baby is only mine, not yours. Adrian ran a hand through his hair in frustration. Legally, financially, it will be my child. But emotionally? He hesitated, unable to finish. Emotionally what? She pressed. Emotionally, I can't let myself get attached to you or the baby, because when it ends, the pain will be too great. His bluntness shattered her. She understood he was so afraid of being hurt that he would rather reject happiness than risk loving again. What if it didn't have to end, she blurted. What if there was a way? But Adrian shook his head before she could finish. There's not. There can't be. We belong to two different worlds. You're young. You have your whole life ahead of you. And me, I'm just a man full of scars who no longer knows how to love the right way. You deserve more than that. He moved toward the door, but she followed. What if all I want is you, even with those scars? He stopped, his hand on the doorknob, not turning around. Then you're fooling yourself, because men like me don't have happy endings. We only know how to survive. With that, he left the apartment, leaving Sophia alone with a shattered heart and 1,000 unanswered questions. In the days that followed, Adrian began avoiding her. He still came to the prenatal appointments, but only arrived on time and left immediately afterward. There were no more unexpected visits, no more small gifts or shared moments. He was polite, but kept his distance, trying to return to the cold, professional demeanor from the beginning. Sophia felt his absence keenly. She had grown used to his presence, their conversations, the feeling of no longer being completely alone. Now, even though she was living in a comfortable apartment with every need provided for, she felt lonelier than she had in her tiny rented room, because now she knew what it was like to have someone truly care, and she also knew what it was like to lose that. At each appointment, she searched his eyes for a sign that he missed her too, but Adrian had put his mask back on, impenetrable as ever. One morning, as Sophia was leaving the clinic, a sleek black SUV pulled up in front of her. Out stepped a silver-haired, imposing man, Eduardo Vega, Adrian's father, alongside a striking, sharply dressed woman in her 40s, Luciana Vega, Adrian's stepmother. "You're Sophia Parker?" Eduardo asked, his voice carrying authority. "Yes, I am," Luciana cut in sharply. "We know exactly what you're doing here, and we're not going to let it happen." They invited her into the car. Inside, Eduardo spoke bluntly. "We know you're carrying Adrian's child. Don't expect us to believe this medical contract story. Women like you are just looking to climb." Sophia stiffened. "I'm not—" Luciana placed a thick envelope on the seat. "This is twice the amount Adrian promised you. The condition is simple. Disappear after the birth and never contact him again." Sophia glanced at the envelope, then met Luciana's eyes. "I don't want your money. I signed a contract. I'll keep my word." The air in the car turned icy. Eduardo shook his head. "You'll regret this." 3 days later, Sophia was notified she had 48 hours to vacate her apartment. Her medical coverage at the center was revoked. Clara called, her voice uneasy. "I'm sorry, Sophia. This came directly from Adrian's family. I can't interfere." Standing in her apartment, looking at the cardboard boxes holding her belongings, tears welled in Sophia's eyes. She wasn't afraid of hardship, but having her safety stripped away left her breathless. Adrian didn't call, just one brief text. "I'm sorry. I need time to sort things out." That night, lying in a bed in a run-down motel on the outskirts of town, Sophia held her belly, feeling the tiny heartbeat within. She whispered, "Mom will protect you, no matter what." In the days that followed, Adrian buried himself in work. But the emptiness in his mind kept growing. One late night, Adrian returned to his penthouse, luxurious but so quiet he could hear the ticking of the wall clock. He opened the fridge but wasn't hungry. Instead, an image of Sophia flashed in his mind, her eyes the day she told him she was pregnant, her gentle voice wishing him a good day. His phone buzzed. It was Dr. Morales. "Adrian, I need to talk to you about Sophia." "What's going on?" "She's still coming to the community clinic for checkups, but I'm concerned about her mental state. Stress, worry, and the lack of the medical support she had before could affect the baby." Adrian stayed silent. Dr. Morales went on. "You're the only one who can change this. I know you two have a contract, but the child she's carrying is also your child." That call haunted Adrian all night. For the first time, he questioned his decision to stay silent. Was he repeating his father's mistake, choosing family power and pride over his own heart? The next day, Adrian went straight to Eduardo and Luciana's house. His father looked up from his desk, eyes stern. "Adrian, you should—" "Be quiet and listen to me," Adrian cut in, his voice cold but resolute. "I love Sophia, and I will take responsibility for her. If either of you tries to interfere again, I'll cut all ties, including financial ones." Luciana let out a scoffing laugh. "You're saying this over a woman you've known for less than a few months?" "No, I'm saying this because she's carrying my child, and because I've realized she matters more than anything else." No one spoke another word. Adrian turned and left, the wooden door trembling slightly as it shut behind him. That afternoon, Adrian called Clara. "I need Sophia's address." "Adrian, are you sure? This will—" "I'm sure. Send it to me." When he got the message, Adrian drove nearly an hour to the outskirts of the city, where old apartment buildings stood shoulder to shoulder. He stopped in front of a small motel, its dim yellow light filtering through dusty windows. He didn't go in right away. He knew. The conversation ahead would decide everything. As Adrian was driving through the city streets, his phone rang. It was Dr. Morales. "Adrian, Sophia's at the hospital. She's having early contractions. I think you should come right away." He didn't ask for details. He started the engine and sped through rain-slicked streets. Less than 15 minutes later, Adrian rushed into the maternity ward, his heart pounding. In the bright white room, Sophia lay on her side, hands on her belly, her face pale but her eyes alert. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was hoarse. Adrian stepped to her bedside, took the chair, and gently placed his hand over hers. "I'm sorry. I left you alone when I should have been here protecting you." Sophia turned her face away, her shoulders trembling. "You don't understand. When they took everything from me, all I had left was this baby. And I swore I'd protect my child, even if it meant fighting you." Adrian's grip tightened, his voice deep but resolute. "You won't have to fight me anymore. I've spoken to my parents. I've chosen you. And if you'll let me, I want us to be a real family. You won't just be the surrogate, you'll be my wife." Sophia's eyes widened, searching his face. "Are you serious?" "I've never been more certain. I love you, Sophia, not just because you're carrying my child, but because you've made me believe in something I thought I'd lost." Tears welled in Sophia's eyes, but this time they were from emotion. She nodded softly. "If you're willing to stand against your own family to be with me, then I'll take the risk of trusting you." Adrian smiled and leaned down to press a gentle kiss to her forehead. We'll welcome our baby into this world together, and no one will ever separate us again." In that moment, Sophia felt as though all the storms they'd weathered had finally lifted. She held his hand tightly, knowing the road ahead would still have challenges. But at least they would walk it side by side. 9 months passed faster than they expected. Prenatal checkups now always had Adrian by Sophia's side, carefully jotting down every note from the doctor. He even learned how to change diapers, make formula, and practice soothing a baby with a doll Dr. Morales had given him. On a spring night, the first cries rang out in the delivery room of Seattle General Hospital. Sophia looked at the tiny, wrinkled newborn placed on her chest, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Hello, Mateo," she whispered, naming their son. Adrian stood beside her, gripping her hand tightly. "You were amazing," he said, his voice thick with emotion. When Mateo's tiny fingers wrapped around his, Adrian knew his life had changed forever. 2 months later, they held a small wedding in the garden behind Adrian's home. Only a few close friends, Dr. Morales and Linda, the coffee shop owner where Sophia once worked, were present. Clara came too, smiling warmly at the newlyweds. Surprisingly, Eduardo and Luciana also appeared. Eduardo stepped forward, placing a hand on Adrian's shoulder. "Son, I was wrong. Thank you for not giving up." Luciana said nothing, but her eyes had softened. That summer, Sophia began studying education at a community college with Adrian's full support. During the day, she attended classes and worked part-time at the library. At night, she returned home to find Adrian rocking Luke to sleep. One late afternoon, when Luke turned 6 months old, the family played together in the garden. Sophia sat on the bench watching Adrian push their son gently on a baby swing. Laughter filled the air beneath the golden glow of sunset. Sophia thought to herself, from a tiny classified ad to an entire family. Their story wasn't perfect, but it was the unexpected turns that had led them to true happiness. And for Sophia, the greatest lesson was this: no matter where you start, no matter how many prejudices the world holds, true love and resilience will always find a way.